welcome in, everyone. Sorry about that quick intro. It's things are still shifting and changing over my way, so expect to see some changes with the show next week for sure. But welcome in, Mark, Greg, RJ, Bullish Brahma. So nice to have you all tonight. Let's talk a little dispersal draft, and afterwards, RJ, we're going to talk a little bit more about you and your show and kind of what you do and your realm of things.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
How are y'all doing tonight?
Great. Thanks, Matthew.
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, peachy. Thanks.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate it again. Let's try not to make this 2.5 hours. That's my goal here.
Agreed.
All right. So we're going to jump right into it. Anything you guys want to add, anything I may get wrong, anything that, any details, please speak your mind. Tell us what's going on and then your perspective on things. All right. Tonight, we're going to discuss the UFL dispersal draft. We'll talk about phase 1, tell a little bit more about phase 2, and then we'll close it out with Mark and Greg and hop back on to RJ.
Sounds good.
All right. So you guys all saw the news yesterday. UFL dispersal draft, mini draft is what they consider it. The mini, what they get 42 players total on each team, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's somewhat confusing with the phases and the minis and the supers, but we're going to try to discuss a little more and get down to it. So they got 42, were they considered unprotected or protected players on this?
42 protected.
Understood. So with the mini draft, that's taking place January 15th. We should be looking at the super draft, which consists of each team picking up 20 unprotected players. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't remember what the number is exactly of how many players. I know it was 20 for the mini dispersal draft. I'm not sure.
It was, the final roster size going to the training camp is 75, so somehow they're going to get there.
Gotcha.
So you figure 42 protected. And you add in, and teams drafted anywhere from, I think, about 9 to 20 in the mini dispersal draft. So you can see how each team has a different philosophy on how to use this draft. Some perhaps waiting for the super dispersal draft to pick up more players. And you also have to remember that this was kind of buried in the press release that boy, I'm going to have a jar, a swear jar.
I'm the same way.
I'm going to be doing that forever. The UFL press release that was put out, and I have it right here. It notes free agency for players who were not selected or did not play in the USFL or XFL in 2023 will continue on January 16th. So it sounds like any players who were not selected in either dispersal draft and any player who's just simply a free agent. Free agency starts January 16th, which is the day after the super dispersal draft. At that point, teams can start adding more players to their roster to get up to that training camp limit. So it does sound like, based on that line in the release, and I know we had speculated, are they going to do another draft, a supplemental draft closer to training camp where they take all of the players who maybe ended the season on NFL practice squads but who did not sign futures contracts? Would all those players and more be put into sort of a supplemental draft? Those guys who maybe were not available to teams in these dispersal drafts, would they go into a supplemental draft closer to training camp to fill out those training camp rosters? It sounds like that's a no. It sounds like it's just going to be kind of free agency. Because if you're doing free agency, I don't know how you do a draft later on, because who's going to be eligible for that draft? Anybody who you would imagine would be eligible is being signed in free agency. So that was, I think, somewhat of an overlooked aspect of that press release that came out yesterday, of that free agency kicking off January 16th after the two dispersal drafts.
Gotcha. So things are going to be shifting a lot. We're going to be looking at a lot of changes from what we already see now. Pulled up, I have the list of the UFL. Look, I did it myself. UFL team rosters. And I mean, we have a lot of names on this list and a lot of known names, whether you're a USFL fan or an XFL fan. And there's a lot of guys on here that we all know and love. I had a really good time looking at this list and really trying to break it down. But man, there is so much going on here between players and teams and coordinations of coaches. I mean, it's a lot. But hopefully today we'll try to get a little bit clear on it. What I've done coming in is I've picked basically 3 highlight players from each team. Now, don't get me wrong, there's more than 3 in each team for sure. Most of these guys are studs that I'm looking at. But I just wanted to get a few talking points and really hit on a few guys that were very crucial for offensive defense on each team. Did you guys have a chance to look at the list I sent you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm just basically going to bring that list up, talk about it some more. You guys can add to it as you feel needed. I mean, like I said, bring anything you want. If you got some more guys you want to talk about, anything I missed, please bring it up. And then, like right here, I have a little slide, and so we're just going to kick it off with the slides first, okay? So we know who that is, right? Jamar Smith. He's a former Stallions quarterback. He's still with the Stallions. He's a 2-time USFL champion. Lord have mercy. I'm going to have to think for that. He was injured early in the 2023 USFL season, so he didn't play much last year, but they still had a phenomenal season the Stallions' way. He had 131 completions with 1,576 yards in the 2022 USFL season. So 1,576 yards on 131 completions in 2022. I mean, this kid's looking to be a stud. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to this team. They should be some heavy hitters, in my opinion. What do you guys think about it?
I think that the new UFL is flush with good players. There's tons of them.
No doubt.
I think that's what you're going to see here. Is there's like, where do all these great players fit in? And this is a good example, isn't it?
Yep. And a big name amongst the USFL side of things. Very, very liked. He can definitely lead a team, in my opinion, as long as he's injury free.
And Birmingham is very lucky because their quarterback last year, Alex Magoo, is now in the NFL. So they have a player with starting experience in Jamar Smith ready to step into that void. So, Birmingham is a team 2-time USFL champions, head and shoulders seemingly above the rest of the teams in the last couple of years in the USFL. Now things get a little more interesting, right? Because now I think the gap closes a little bit with the combination of the XFL and the USFL. I think the floor rises a little bit, right? Because the teams that were good are getting better because they're replacing decent players with really good ones from the teams that are no longer part of this league. Mm-hmm. Whereas Birmingham, they already had good players, so they're picking good players back, but they're replacing good with good. So I think the floor sort of rises, and it'll be interesting to see if Birmingham can dominate the same way that they did over the last few years, and now that the teams around them have gotten even better.
So more parity, maybe. As if we needed more parity, we're going to get more parity between the teams.
I'd be surprised if we see a 1-9 team in this league like we saw with the Orlando Guardians.
Right. So let's talk about the Orlando Guardians. So what happened to all their coaching staff?
They've been sent away to a deserted island. I think we've not heard hide or hair of them.
It's like they had to go to that island on Survivor, where if you're bad, you have to go there for a while and you don't get to play. So I think that's another way the floor has been raised is, maybe this, because that was a headline when the XFL 2023 started, was how many first-time head coaches do we have in this league? And we talked about that, and it was bantered around. The results of the 2023 XFL season showed that there was some, for not all the ways, but for the most part, that was some of those head coaches were an experiment that didn't work, with the exception of the St. Louis Battlehawks, right? Of course. Mm-hmm. Who's the head coach actually succeeded, did very well. And he was a first-year head coach, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But the Orlando head coach, Terrell Buckley, I guess, I don't know where he'll show up somewhere, but I don't know where.
I hope he shows up somewhere. If he doesn't, we need to put some missing posters.
Yeah, that's not like, that's not exactly what I'm saying, but yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's an assistant coach somewhere in the league. I don't know. He's got a contractor. I don't know what his contract's like. I have no idea.
Yep. It'll be nice in the next couple of months for the dust to settle and really be able to check everything out. It's been so crazy this month, man. Last month we've had so many leaks and drops and this and that, and so when everything settles, I'm curious.
Don't you think the UFL is struggling right now because they're trying to play catch up and they're marketing this thing now? They've been in the NFL games last weekend. They were pumping out UFL this and UFL that, which is great to see. But they're only less than 3 months to go now, of course, 2.5 months, let's say. Wow. And then they're just finally putting their teams together now, and they're not even done. It's crazy. And then the other thing about what they're doing is you notice that they didn't say anything about the picks. They say we're not going to release the picks until Monday. So all last weekend, it was all on social. It was this player's gone here and this player's been picked here, and all those rumors came true as far as I can tell, and none of them were false. Mm-hmm. It was all real, and some of them. And then on Monday, the UFL goes, guess what? We
gotten everybody
the draft. Here's all the players, and then there was this orgasm of social media. Boom, boom! Like I guess they were working on that all weekend too. And of course, and then we heard about at least one player that said, I had never volunteered to be in this league. I told him no. And of course, but I mean, they had to call all these players. They probably tried calling. I won't even mention his name just for the
I mean, I was going to bring it up as well, so it's okay. We've kind of flipped the script a little bit, and that's all right. But yeah, I mean, it was important.
But they maybe couldn't get a hold of him. Maybe, you don't answer your phone on the weekend. Maybe, unknown number. Yeah, forget it.
That tweet has since been deleted. You can't, it's not on there anymore. Yeah. And he's all for the teams now. If you look at his Twitter, he's all for it. He's ready to roll.
Somebody talked to him and said, hey, guy, you got to be positive if you want to work in this league or work in football. But anyways, it's just been I used the word, it was like a massive rush of announcements. It's like, like they trying to catch up. Of course they are. It's crazy.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder because, like for San Antonio, we had 18 Roughnecks players signed. And it kind of makes you wonder if all this was not planned in advance. Like, how can one team draft so many players from one single team without any type of, pre-planning? Like, was this already orchestrated way in advance, and then this is just the results of what was planned weeks ago?
I think it's just the byproduct of the Houston coaching staff moving to San Antonio, and
Wade.
They had a very specific system, especially offensively, the run and shoot. And San Antonio's offense, I mean, you look at what San Antonio did last year. I mean, it was bruising running backs, it was huge tight ends, it was big wide receivers, and that's just not the run and shoot offense. So you have to completely revamp your offensive side of the ball to bring that system in. And we heard reports that AJ Smith, the Houston offensive coordinator, was coming with Wade Phillips to San Antonio, although the rest of the coaching staffs have not been released yet. So it really was needed. And I mean, San Antonio wasn't the only team to draft players from Houston. We saw DC pick up two of Houston's best defenders in Tim Ward and Trent Harris. So certainly, the Houston Roughnecks 2023 team was available for everybody, and everybody took a piece of them. But it made sense that San Antonio took more of the piece because their coaching staff came over, and certainly the offensive system that they run required certain players, of which San Antonio did not have. I think I looked through San Antonio's 42 protections, and I think they only kept 18 or 19 players who actually played for the Brahmas last year. The rest were letter of intent signings, rookie draft picks who were
Right.
taken
Yeah,
and
those
things like
13.
that. So
Right.
they did not keep many actual Brahmas players who played in the league last year, even among the 42 that were protected.
Right. Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's
pretty
an
wild. You know, it's to be honest with you, when I saw Max Borgi go over to the Battlehawks, that was kind of writing on the wall that most of that Houston team would be gone.
Well, I do wonder if there are regrets now, because we saw that Houston released a bunch of players, including Max Borgi, and thinking that, look, we're not going to be in the league next year. The coaching staff's not going to have a place. Let's just release these players before they get an opportunity to get drafted. And now, oops, the coaching staff is going over to San Antonio, and I bet AJ Smith would love to have had Max Borgi and had the opportunity to draft him, but instead he was claimed by St. Louis. So there might be some seller's remorse on that one for some of the Houston / San Antonio coaching staff.
You know, something untoward happened there when they released all those players. They didn't
there should have been a freeze on the roster. They should not have been allowed to.
Because, and I was told by a relative of one of the players that was released that they were told that if they got released now, there would be a chance they could be picked up by another XFL team prior to, because they had no hopes of at that point of the Roughnecks itself continuing, not knowing about what the change that was going to occur. So those players all got released. I think there was about 10 or 11. Now, when they came time to for the dispersal draft, one of those players was picked up by the DC Defenders. Now the name, I have the name on my fingertips here, but the player that I was talking to, or their relative, basically his father, told me that he was told that he would not be eligible for the dispersal draft because he had been released.
Mm-hmm.
So he did not get picked, and none of those players got picked, but one did. And I responded back and I said, well, one did. So there's a little bit of confusion in what happened with the Roughnecks. I think they made a mistake by doing that. That's what I think.
Yeah. So my question is this, and you guys may not know the answer, but say your guy like you're talking about, Mark, we come January 16th, can he be picked back up as a free agent?
A free agent, yeah, but not. Okay. Yeah, but not in the next. Apparently, he's not eligible. He's been told he's not eligible for the next super draft.
And in theory, being a free agent allows him to pick the team that he would want to sign with, as opposed to being drafted and being forced onto a team if there are multiple suitors for his services. So that may actually play better into his interest than being drafted. But
Agreed.
Certainly you'd like the security of being drafted too, and knowing that you're on a team and not having to wait until January 16th or after to sign with a team. Yeah.
So I'll tell you who this was. This is he's a DB, Riley Tejada. Riley Tejada and his brother played for San Antonio, Ranthony Tejada. Mm-hmm. And both the Tejadas were not selected in this round of the draft. So they're both out there right now.
That's they're a hot name. I mean, you heard a lot of PR from those two names. You know, they're brothers.
They're the brothers.
They're not twins, right? They're just brothers.
No, there's a third one coming up. There's actually a third Tejada in the college system right now. It's coming out. Apparently, his father tells me he's better than the other two.
It's like the Watt family,
some
man.
Good football playing genes on that family. Their father was a college player.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I see what you guys are saying, and I'm curious to see how it all ends up. Like I said, that's kind of why I haven't analyzed this too much, because these rosters are going to shift. I bet we see some trades. We're going to see some people dropped and picked up. It's going to be a different spectrum come February 15th for sure.
And that's the big point too. The 42 players protected, even the players drafted in the mini dispersal draft that we just had, there's no guarantee that those players are going to go to camp with those teams, because once January 16th hits and free agency hits, if there's a lot of interest from those fringe NFL players, the players who were not eligible for the dispersal draft and had not played in either the USFL or XFL in 2023, if there's a lot of interest from former practice squad players who are looking for work, teams are going to want to sign them, and they need space on their roster, so they may end up having to drop some of these guys. So you're right, these rosters are going to be fluid. Some of these players are going to be dropped before training camp, and that's just the reality of the business. There's always a transaction going on behind the scenes, if not in front.
All right, I'm going to jump back into this list now so we don't sit on here for 3 hours. But I'm all for what you guys are saying, and I don't know. Like we knew this was going to be positive and negative, and it just depends on what side of the fence you sit on right now if you're liking what's going on, because you talk to a Seattle Sea Dragons fan, I guarantee you they don't like what's going on. They got a lot to say about it. So let's hop back on the list. We were talking about the Birmingham Stallions. We had Jamar Smith. Just wanted to see if you guys want to add any comments to him, just talking about him and what he's going to offer the Stallions again this year.
A winning season.
I agree. That's, in my opinion, that's one of the top ranked teams right now. We don't have power rankings available, but if I was to look at this list from what they've drafted and who's returned, they're looking pretty powerful next year.
Yeah.
Brahmas and Stallions in the championship game.
Hey, anything can happen. I mean, ask the Arlington team, right? Anything can happen. So.
Yeah, that's correct. So next up, I highlighted Victor Bolden Jr. He's also a Stallion. He's the only person that's a USFL champion as well as an XFL champion. In 2 years, he's had 45 receptions for 855 yards. So that's going to be a hot name to watch there. I bet you there's going to be a lot going on offensively. Gary Jennings was the next one I had. Gary Jennings Jr., former STL Battlehawk. Last year, he had 11 receptions for 149 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, he wasn't number one for the Battlehawks receiving core, but he was definitely a crucial piece to that team last year.
Yeah, he was one of those guys who signed to an NFL team this summer in training camp. So in order to do that, had to be released from his XFL contract and ended up signing with the Stallions and the USFL. But I mean, you look at the Battlehawks receiver core, they were able to bring Hakeem Butler back, their top receiver last year. They were able to bring back Jamarcus Bradley, who was a top draft pick of theirs last November. He never actually played for the Battlehawks because he ended up in the NFL. So St. Louis retained his rights, and now he is one of the players who was protected. So it's a good wide receiver core. They got Blake Jackson from Seattle. They got Ja'Cour Pearson, of course, probably me bearing the lead there, getting Ja'Cour Pearson from Seattle. So yeah, Gary Jennings was sort of a role player with St. Louis, part of a really deep receiving core. They had Stephen Mitchell, they had George Campbell there. But I think St. Louis is going to be okay without him, but I do think he'll add some value to the Stallions.
For sure. Agreed. Is there any other names you guys want to note for the Stallions before we move on to the Houston Roughnecks? All righty. Let's talk about the Roughnecks. The first name I had, of course, on the list is Reuben Foster. Just absolute stud. We all know this name, I'm sure. Last year, he played 8 games. He had 29 tackles. He's just an experienced veteran. I feel like he's going to be crucial for this Roughnecks defense, especially with some of the people that have been taken from that team and basically ended up at the Brahmas on the D-line.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who's one of the more experienced NFL players to come to the UFL. And, I think they look at him as kind of a leader on the field from that linebacker spot. So, yeah, he's going to provide a lot of value to Houston.
Agreed. Another name I had on the list was Isaiah Henney. He's a former Pittsburgh Mauler receiver. Last year, he had 46 receptions for 474 yards. So, definitely going to be watching for him this year, no doubt. Chris Odom is who I highlighted next, D-tackle. He's a former Houston Gambler as well. He's got 41 total tackles and 12.5 sacks in the 2023 season. I believe he won an award too, but I can't remember correctly. I don't want to say
Defensive
it.
Player of the Year 2022, I believe.
That's what I thought. I just didn't want to speak my mind without knowing for sure.
Yeah, he's interesting because he parlayed that into an NFL shot, and then he was actually, his rights were claimed by the Orlando Guardians this past summer, and so there was a decision he had to make about moving on to the XFL or coming back to the USFL, which was a decision that was sort of made for him with the Guardians going away. So, obviously he's got strong credentials too as a pass rusher, as a force on that defense. So, they've got guys at every level on that Houston defense that I think are going to affect the pass game in terms of Odom and then affect the run game in terms of Foster. So really good base of a defense there for the Roughnecks.
Agreed. Now, we saw a lot of these gambler players just roll onto the Roughnecks. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was the exact number, but it was a lot.
It was, it was their roster. So
gotcha.
The Gamblers, the Roughnecks were protecting Gamblers players. So the 42 protections were of the Houston Gamblers players. And then you saw, looks like a lot of players from, well, see, this is interesting because usually you could look at a team and they've taken players from a specific team, but it looks like Houston drafted players from a wide range of teams. So interesting.
Gotcha. I just knew the few key names there, so that's kind of what stuck out in my head. And like I was telling you before we started the show, I've been an XFL guy, so it's weird coming into this and researching some of these names, and I'm not familiar with it all.
Yeah.
I can go in this list and find 20 XFL men, but it's the other guys I really have to research. So hoping to catch up and learning about some of these good players as we go.
Yeah, there's some catching up to do.
Next up, we got the Memphis Showboats. The number one pick, in my opinion, Case Cookus, former Philadelphia Star, just an absolute stud in the USFL. He had 218 completions last year for a total 2,295 yards with 15 touchdowns. So this team is looking good from their picks. That's my opinion. Really, really favoring them. And to be honest with you, I kind of want to cover them this year, just in general. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Memphis is interesting because they've got 4 quarterbacks on their roster now. Although I think Cookus is pretty clearly the starter. They've got Ryan Willis, who didn't make the Battlehawks last year. They've got Guy Myers, and they've got Cole Kelly as well. So I think Cookus is, based on his play in the USFL in previous seasons, probably walks in day one as the starter in Memphis. So, a guy like Cookus sort of raises the quality of the offense overall. So I think that's going to be a real boon for them to have him come in. Agreed.
Next up on the list, I had Jonathan Adams. I graduated from A-State. He's an A-State graduate as well, so I'm familiar with him. He played for the New Orleans Breakers last year. 41 receptions for 511 yards in that 2023 USFL season. He's a good man to throw a ball to for sure. So looking for him this year. Next up, I had Darius Victor, running back, former New Jersey General. He was named to the All-USFL team and was named the 2022 United States Football League Offensive Player of the Year. That's a mouthful. Yeah, he led the league with 9 touchdown runs in 2022.
Former New York Guardian, I believe, as well.
Gotcha.
XFL 2020 throwback.
Oh, that's a good. I'm glad you remember that, man. I miss those days sometimes. Much simpler times, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's before all the mess. All right, so I'm going to move forward from that unless you guys got anyone else you want to note from that team. The Showboats. All right, let's move it on. All right, next up for the Michigan Panthers, I really like Wes Hills, running back, former New Orleans Breakers. He had 180 attempts last year with a total of 680 yards in the league. That was the most in the league in 2023. He had 10 TDs as well in that 2023 season. He made the All-USFL team. He should be a difference maker for those Panthers.
Now, he went to college in Slippery Rock. Anyone want to guess what state that's in?
Oregon?
I have no idea.
I think it's New York.
I
think. Let me look it up, because if I'm
thought
wrong, I want to.
Yeah, I thought you knew too. I was like, come on, trivia.
If I'm wrong, I want to take full responsibility for Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, gotcha.
I was close.
Sorry, guys, in the comments. Honestly, we got RJ in here, and I don't want to cover his face up at the bottom. Every time I click a comment, he's covered up. So I see your comments.
Probably for the best.
If you're asking a question, I will note it and star it, and I'll ask here in a minute when we're done with the conversation. No problem. So feel free to ask away. All right. So next up for those Panthers. Now, I need help saying this. Cole Hakatuni. Did I say that correctly?
I think it's
Hikutini. I'm terrible with names most of the time. Tight end, former Michigan Panther. I did not have time to gather stats for this guy and the next guy I'm speaking about, but I was hoping you guys could maybe fill in the gaps about something about him.
Hikutini was a guy I liked coming out of college, out of Louisville. He was an undrafted free agent in the NFL, so I remember that name. I don't know what he did in the USFL last year, but I do remember that name as a guy who I thought was a little underrated coming out of college. So, he fits in a league like the UFL then.
Yeah, no doubt. The next one I had was Breland Speaks. He's a DN. These guys are both Michigan Panthers as well, Cole and Breland. Don't have much stats on Breland as well, but I know he is a stud. I just didn't have time to gather the numbers I wanted to here to speak about.
Another guy with a bit of an NFL pedigree. He's played in the league. They have a really good defensive line, just looking up and down their roster. Daniel Wise out of Kansas in the middle. They got Kenny Willeeks out of Michigan State as an edge player, defensive end, sort of linebacker hybrid. So you had Breland Speaks in there as sort of a veteran. And, I kind of like how they're building that defensive line there in Michigan.
Agreed. That he's a former Mississippi State graduate as well, I believe. Is that correct? I think so. I think that's how I knew the name originally.
Sounds about right. Let's see.
It's either Mississippi or Mississippi State. It's Mississippi. So it's Ole Miss.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right. Before we move on, is there anybody you want to add to this Michigan Panthers list? And guys at home, I know we're missing people. I get it, but I just wanted to pick some names that would be highlightable and that you could look up, and you're going to see these names at some point in this season, no doubt. All right, let's move on to the Brahmas. Now, looking at the Brahmas, man, they got a pretty good roster. And the only downside that I'm hearing from a lot of these fans and a lot of analysts is the quarterback situation there. But I know Cody Latimer should be a huge piece of this offense. Last year, he had 50 targets for 593 yards and 4 touchdowns. Number one receiver in Orlando, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah, he was crucial. And they did a lot of dumps. They did a lot of catching up. So, that does have something to do with it. But, man, he's an athlete. And I'm so looking forward to seeing what he does this year with a decent team and slash quarterback.
It's nice to see him that he's going to continue for another season with the league. And, see what he can do this year.
Agreed. Another notable name that I highlighted was Tavante Beckett, linebacker. He was a former Houston Roughneck. Key part of their defense last year. Very, very, very good. Shifty. He can stop the run, no doubt. I'm very adamant that this guy will be a key piece of this defense.
Oh,
yeah, I think so. I want to let RJ take the Brahmas stuff first.
Oh, he's got it.
He's our Brahmas guy, so I'm gonna step away and let him take over this one.
Let me hit up the last name, and then I'll let you have the floor, RJ.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Nick Holly was the next one I had. Now, last year he was traded from the Roughnecks to the Brahmas, and he didn't get utilized too much in that Brahma game, but I know what he can do. I know what he's capable of. I've actually had some conversation with him personally, and he's a really good guy. So also looking forward to seeing what he does there. I'm kind of curious how the relationship is there, considering they traded him off. I know originally he wasn't too happy about it, but so we'll see what happens. But RJ, man, what you got about your Brahmas? I know you're ready to talk about them.
Well, we all know that Yeah, Cody Latimer is going to be an absolute beast in San Antonio. Right now, he's the only tight end on the roster. But when you have him, you really don't need another tight end. He's going to be the man. And I think that with a better offensive line in San Antonio, you're going to see a better Jack Cohn. You look at the last 3 games of the season. Last season, he was throwing over 300 yards per game. The sacks were down. His accuracy was better. He looked really good at the last 3 games of the season. And with a better offensive line, you're going to see a better Jack Cohn. And having a tight end like Latimer is just going to make him even better. And then with Nick Hawley, yeah, he was traded during the season last year, and his appearance, his addition to the team, I think really was a good catalyst, because looking at it, he and Jack Cohn really connected, and Nick Hawley in a short period of time was catching ball after ball, and he actually had the first 100-yard receiving game at the Brahmas last season, and he was an absolute stud at the end. So having that type of chemistry continuing on to this season, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, Nick's super physical, and if you ever meet him in person, he looks smaller when you see him on TV, but when you meet him in person, he's a large man. He's got some big arms, big legs, very physical. So I agree with that 100%.
And the players that I'm really looking at for me personally, it's all offensive linemen. I mean, the other big signing we had was Alex Millett from the Roughnecks, and we had a couple people that had signed letters of intent that were drafted, like Joe Crawl. He was from the IFL, the Quad City Steamwheelers. I don't know how much you know about the Indoor Football League, but yeah, with him, the Steamwheelers only allowed 8 sacks all season last season, which is one of the fewest in the IFL. And we also picked up, let's see, the other guy we picked up was, Rashad Coward, an offensive guard also from the Roughnecks. He did have extensive time in the NFL. He was with the Arizona Cardinals, where he saw the most significant time. He had 39 games in the NFL. He started 19 games, only allowed 4 sacks in his career, and 3 of them was in one season. So I think that with the offensive lineman help and an improved line, you're going to see a very good San Antonio Brahmas team, because our defense was stellar last year, and we're just going to continue to get better.
Agreed. Guys, you got any comments?
Yeah, that was a good point by RJ about the tight ends, because I talked about sort of the transformation of the San Antonio roster, especially the offense. And we know that the run and shoot offenses do not utilize traditional tight ends. So they didn't protect any tight ends that they had on their roster from San Antonio. And they only acquired one, Cody Latimer, who is really more of a wide receiver tight end hybrid. He's going to line up in the slot. He's not going to line up in line and block in the run game as a tight end. He's going to be a mismatch in the slot that Jack Cohn or whomever is at quarterback can take advantage of. So that was sort of, if you're looking at San Antonio and wondering why they have a tight end when AJ Smith from the June Jones tree, they don't utilize tight ends. That's the reason. He's not really the traditional tight end. He's more of a hybrid. And it's a time of change with San Antonio. I think they're going to be a lot more exciting offense next year, if anything.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we move on, any other comments about San Antonio?
Looking forward to see how they do.
Same.
And that RJ, that Jack Cohn thing you said is absolutely right. You know, I hope that he has the O-line and he's going to mess it up this year.
I think so, and I think that we'll prove all the haters wrong, because Jack Cohn did get a lot of hate up here in San Antonio, but he was on his back for most of the season.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at his percentage, his pass completion percentage, it's not the worst. It's not the best, but it's fair for what he dealt with. And with these line pieces, this is the Roughnecks line from last year. Some of these pieces are really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
The Brahmas allowed 26 sacks last season, which was the 3rd most in the XFL, only behind Orlando and Seattle. And you look at the offensive line, we only protected 2. because Luke Juriga was the only offensive lineman that started every single game last year. The rest of the line was in and out, and we had the other offensive lineman, which is Cole Liaboa. He also played 10 games, but he only started 8, and so he's the only other one that was protected. The rest of the offensive linemen, you look at it, it was 1 game, 3 games, 2 games, 1 game, 3 games, 5 games. I mean, with that inconsistency, it's like no wonder our quarterbacks were running for the life. And then Kurt Bankirk was knocked out for the season, and then yet Reece Sinnett was also injured for the season, and Jack Cohn was injured and he missed time. And it's like, well, with that inconsistency on the offensive line, it's like no wonder our quarterback play was terrible.
Yeah, speaking of Kurt, he was also picked up in this draft.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
He supposedly retired. At least he said in a tweet that he retired to pursue some other adventure. So, I mean, let's see, change his mind.
Well, it's my understanding that the only players that were made available to be selected were players that had signed letters of intent for 2024. So I would assume then that Ben Kurt signed a letter of intent for 2024 if he was protected.
Exactly.
So I'm not really sure what's going on there. I guess we'll find out when camp opens.
Yeah, he didn't have any comments on Twitter about that, did he? I mean, I looked, but I didn't see anything personally.
I haven't seen.
I think there's a lot of people just making sure their nests are feathered here. In other words, they're packing it full with whatever they can at this point, knowing it's going to change.
Yep. I know. I saw like the power polls, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Then this was prior to even Monday's news. It was like Friday.
Amateurs, they just don't know what goes on in these leagues. We've seen it all. Everything's going to change. Everything's going to change.
I LOL'd for real in real life. All right, let's move on to the Battle Hawks. Now they've got a lot of weapons, guys. They're looking like studs. Yeah, where'd that picture come from?
Well, it came from the XFL, but that's the player. He's quite the mystery. I think Greg knows way more about this. Why the NFL never picked him up? I mean, he was the top dog, but he had lots of tryouts, so didn't he, Greg?
Yeah, I think he had more tryouts than any XFL player did, and for whatever reason, that never resulted in a contract. I wrote a column about, one of the things that leagues like the XFL and now the UFL like to tout is the opportunity they provide players, but sometimes the opportunity for even really good players doesn't come from the NFL. And so, I think working against him for a big reason is his size. He's diminutive, and there are exceptions to the rule that we've seen in the NFL be successful, but usually those are players drafted that teams do a lot of heavy research into. It's not someone who walks in off the street and they're going to sign to a contract. So that's unfortunate, but a league like the UFL coming along gives an opportunity for a player like Pearson to make a living playing football, even if it's not in the NFL.
Yeah, big name, the best receiver in the XFL last year, no doubt, Ja'Cour Pearson. He played 9 games. I guess he was hurt 1 game. He was targeted 84 times with 60 receptions and a total of 670 yards. And that's in the regular season as well. They didn't make it postseason, did they? I can't even remember. I have to look it up. But he had 4 total TDs for the year with that Seattle.
They did make it to the postseason. That was the game where they threw all but like 1 play, didn't they? They ran the ball like twice.
Yep. That's right. You're right. 100% correct. That's where everybody was questioning what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
Next up, I had PETA, the former XFL Defensive Player of the Year, played for the Vegas Vipers, linebacker, should look good. And Greg, I know you know how to say his name. Say it correctly for me, please.
Taumoepenu.
Taumoepenu. Is that correct?
No T at the end. Taumoepenu.
Taumoepenu. I'll get railed by this online, but that's okay. I'd rather make it public that I don't know before I say it wrong. I remember last year, Teamu, I was saying his name, Tamamu, and I got railed online for that. So, guys, please excuse me. I do the best I can, I promise. Next up, I had Nico Bolden, defensive back at Kent State last year. 2 years ago, I believe. Bolden made 188 tackles in his time there, and I believe he only played 1 year at Kent State. He transferred from I can't remember. But yeah, so he had 188 tackles in that year, 2 interceptions. He broke up 3 passes, forced 2 fumbles, and recovered 1 fumble as well. He was initially signed to the Carolina Panthers as an undrafted free agent, but he was waived because of an injury, and he missed the 2023 season because of that. You guys got any other names you want to bring up from this Battlehawks? Now, I got one more, and that's Max. Max Borghi.
Yeah.
Stud. If you don't know his name by now, you should definitely look him up, guys at home. He's going to be a key piece of this Battlehawks offense, no doubt. This team in general, just looking at their roster as well, I'm putting them at top 2 just right now from looking at this roster. They've got some big names.
It's hard not to consider that they're going to be there.
Yeah, the Battlehawks to me are a team that won the offseason, for whatever that's worth. We hear a lot in the NFL about teams who win the offseason. Usually that doesn't always translate onto the field, but St. Louis was a team that going into 2023 was a team at the top of a lot of odds makers' lists about winning the XFL championship. They finished 7-3. We know the controversy about them not making the playoffs and everything like that, but they got so much better with one caveat in the offseason. You know, they add Ja'Cour Pearson, the leading receiver in the league last year. They add Pita Taumoepenu, the leading sack artist in the league last year. They add one of the top running backs in the league in Max Borghi. They get a lot of players back who signed into the NFL this summer. I think they were the team among the XFL teams anyway that had the most players sign into the NFL this summer and then sign letters of intent to come back. They get a guy like Jamarcus Bradley, who they drafted in 2022, who, as I talked about earlier, ended up signing into the NFL, didn't play with the Battlehawks in 2023. It's kind of like a free draft pick they get this year. Mm-hmm. So they had a tremendous offseason in terms of adding top-end talent. The only question mark now is at the quarterback position, where A.J. McCarron is now on the roster of the Cincinnati Bengals, the 53-man roster. So there's no, do I sign a futures contract or not? Because he's not on the practice squad. He's on the actual roster. So he is going to be a Bengal heading into 2024 season. The Battlehawks did protect 2 quarterbacks, Nick Tiano, their backup, who started 1 game last year, defeated the Vegas Vipers, and Manny Wilkins, their backup, who ended up being the 3rd string when McCarron was healthy. So they've got 2 quarterbacks. The question is the coaching staff confident enough in Nick Tiano? Did they see enough in him last year to where they're ready to go into 2024 with him as the starter, or are they going to try to look to add another top-end quarterback between now and training camp?
I think they're going to look for another quarterback for training camp.
Agreed.
Because they almost have to.
Yeah, because you going into training camp, you need to have that depth to try people out. Now, I just thought about Cole McDonald from the Roughnecks. Now, he was one of the players that was released just prior to Christmas. Now, where is he going to end up? Or is he going to come back and play in the UFL, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was a backup last year, sort of a gadget player with Houston, came in and ran the ball a lot, almost a wildcat quarterback for the Roughnecks last year. I'm not sure if he showed enough last year to kind of walk in and even compete for a starting job. He could find a spot as a backup somewhere, maybe in San Antonio. Maybe the Houston coaching staff liked what they saw, and they'll sign him back up once free agency starts. But
yeah, so the Phillips might bring him over, might bring him in
possible.
Training camp. Yeah, and of course he was a big star of the XFL last year because he was featured in this series, TV series, and that.
Yeah. A lot of these names are well known, and I'll tell you one thing: if there's one franchise in this league that loves their players and team, it's definitely St. Louis. So they're going to rally behind whoever is there.
So that's the other player is the fans there are going to, they're going to come out and pack that dome again because they're crazy for the Battle Hacks, and they'll all be going caca, which is awesome. And it's going to happen. And I think the other thing was the head coach he's a player's coach, so the players want to play for him.
Agreed.
It's a big deal.
All right, we ready to move on to our next team?
Yep.
Okay, next up, let's talk about the DC Defenders. We have Abram Smith returning. I would say he was the best RB in XFL 23. You
Yep.
can debate that a little bit, but not too much. He had 157 attempts last year for 788 yards with 7 touchdowns. Stud.
Cool. Well, the Defenders are happy to get him back. I mean, the Defenders fans start squeezing your lemons because you got, and plus they have Trent Harris now too to shore up their defense. So it's like, bring it.
Agreed. Yeah, that's another name I was going to bring up, Trent Harris, one of my favorites from last year. Just absolutely demolished there the first half of the season. He kind of slowed down that second half, but man, he had a lot of sacks there that first half. Next up, I had. Oh, go ahead. Greg.
Him and Tim Ward. I mean, DC got both of them. They were the sort of two-headed monster on Houston's defense, and so they feasted a little bit on Orlando, who was overmatched in terms of the offensive line against Houston, and Harris and Ward were able to rack up a lot of sacks against them. But I mean, to be able to add these to a Greg Williams defense it's going to put fear into some offensive coordinators next year.
Yep, agreed. Oh, another name. Like I said, Santos Ramirez. He was a defensive back, former DC defender as well. Mm-hmm. He's really a key part of that defense. So this defense in DC is gonna be good. They're gonna be good, and I'm looking forward to seeing them play. The big question in DC right now is who's going to be quarterback.
Mm-hmm. That's the question for a lot of teams, right? And it's the most important position. So it makes sense that we ask that question. Jordan Ta'amu is sort of MIA. He signed with the Minnesota Vikings, so he had to be released from his XFL contract, had not signed a letter of intent to come back, so he was not eligible to be protected. One assumes that his rights would still be owned by the DC Defenders should he choose to return. But that's really up in the air right now. And we don't know if the Defenders front office has been in contact with Ta'amu. We don't know if they know what his plans are or not. We know that they did not protect any quarterbacks in the draft. They only drafted DeAndre Francois, who was a backup in Orlando, who plays a similar style to that of Derek King, who probably isn't coming back because he took a quarterback's coach job at SMU, and it would be very difficult to juggle a position coach job at a high-level college and play football as well. So you could see Francois stepping into the King role, but that still means they're missing a starting quarterback. So it's either going to be Ta'amu or they're going to have to go outside the organization to find someone.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute.
I bet Derek King wants to come back, but the timing he's probably trying everything to work out the timing. I bet you that's my thought on him. And DeAndre Francois.
But is he even a starter if he comes back?
Well, right.
Is he a guy who you can walk in and hand the starting job to? He was a guy who was brought in. They had a package of plays for him last year, but he was a guy who was not really the starter, and you weren't really sure watching him if he could really handle a full season's load at quarterback.
Yeah, he was awesome on a green painted field in Las Vegas. That's like, bring him in. You got one of those fields, he's the guy.
You had to bring up the field.
Well, yeah, it's still fun to talk about. But he won that game for them in the rain. I mean, he was the guy. So you need a weapon like that, obviously, in this playing football this time of year. But if he came back, wouldn't he be he would be competing with DeAndre Francois in training camp for that backup role, that running quarterback backup role?
A lot of folks were kind of bashing DC for their QB pick, and this is from my observation online.
Do you think they know something about Ta'amu that they're going to get him back?
There's got to be something going on there, whether it's King or Ta'amu. It's one or the other. They've got a plan, I think, in action, and we'll see it unfold soon.
Yeah, I don't think Francois was drafted to be the starter. Let's make that clear. He was probably drafted to fill the King role, and they'll be looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, I think maybe Greg's got it right there. That's it.
Yeah, agreed. Before I move on, is there anything else about these defenders we should discuss?
Beer snake, why?
Beer snake, lemons.
How much money does it cost to make one of those beer snakes? I want to know. I want some reporting on that.
Well, hopefully it doesn't get banned again this year for a short time.
Well, that was silly.
Yeah,
was
very
just
silly.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the lemons. I really hope I can attend a DC game this year. I've never been to DC. I'd love to go for a game. That would be fantastic. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm very impressed by their soccer field setup. I've heard so many things about how intense it is to play there and just be on the field during a game. So really looking forward to that aspect.
Yeah. Good for them.
Next up, let's talk about the Renegades. I left them for last because I feel like there's going to be a little QB controversy there. First up, I've got Lindsey Scott, picture of him in college. His final season in UIW. Scott set a new FCS record for touchdown passes in a season with 60. He finished the season with 321 completions on 453 pass attempts for 4,657 passing yards and 60 touchdowns. He also rushed 12 times for 712 yards and 11 touchdowns. Scott won the Walter Payton Award at the end of the season. So, go ahead.
You're right. I think the Arlington quarterback spot is going to be interesting. And if we had not known, if it had not leaked that Scott was the first pick by the Renegades, we would probably look at this list and say, oh, they got themselves a nice backup quarterback, whatever, when Luis Perez retires or wants to move on with his life. But the fact that he was the number one overall pick really makes you wonder, are they going to spend a number one overall pick for a guy who may not play much the first year? So that does make you question, okay, I know that Luis Perez turned Arlington's season around to the point that he led them to a championship, but they're drafting Scott with the number one overall pick. What's his role going to be in 2024? So that does raise some questions. Arlington was a team that had, I think, 6 or 7 quarterbacks that they had claimed at one time or another or had signed letters of intent. So they were really stockpiling quarterbacks. Now, they didn't protect them all. They only protected Luis Perez and Holden Ahlers, and then they drafted Scott as well. So their quarterback room might be full at this point, and it's a good one for sure. They've got 2 young guys to push Luis Perez, that's for sure. And perhaps, if Perez is only going to give it one more year, they may be getting ready for 2025 already.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we had a question from XFL Mike G. How did he end up in Arlington? I know he signed to the Houston Roughnecks originally. He had that LOI back in, July? And so he wasn't protected, I guess, and rolled out to another team.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't be protected because he was on a team that no longer exists.
Understood.
So I bet San Antonio, which is Houston's coaching staff, would have loved to have drafted him. Yeah. But Arlington took him number one overall, maybe as much to avoid having him go to San Antonio as much as utilizing him themselves.
We had some more comments. Lindsey Scott or Luis Perez, who you got? The controversy has begun.
Yeah.
Championship team controversy. We got to love it.
Mm-hmm.
XFL Mike G said Perez plays and they groom Scott. And I could see that, but I could also see Perez being a good trade tool to get some more utilization.
Yeah.
He's shown his worth as a trade.
He's a tradesman.
Yeah.
He can go anywhere and play.
Yeah.
He's not messed up about it.
Yeah, that's his thing for his career in these alternative leagues.
I just look at Lindsey Scott coming out of Incarnate Word, which I believe is an FCS program. Mm-hmm. He's going to need some time to develop. As good as he was at that level, I don't know that he's ready to come in and be a starter day one at a league of this level and of this competition that we're going to see this year. So I could totally see that exact scenario playing out. Perez starts, they groom Scott for a future role.
Agreed.
I'm a huge Lindsey Scott fan myself. My wife and I actually covered UIW last year when they were doing their playoff run. So we got to interview him a couple times, and she wrote a couple articles on him. He was a very nice kid, very polite, very friendly, just an awesome kid, someone that you can really, really get behind and root. And I was really hoping he was going to come to San Antonio because I would love to see a local kid.
Honestly, RJ, I think he would have, because he's a guy who fits what A.J. Smith does on offense. He's a quarterback who fits what they do, and I think he would have been perhaps even a first-round pick of the Brahmas had Arlington not had the first pick and drafted him with that.
Yeah, it was supposedly we didn't have the first pick because of a trade last season, mid-season, which, I mean, I followed the team closely, and I don't recall any trade with Arlington at all, so I'm still confused of why the way didn't have the first pick.
The way it was told to me by Mike Mitchell, so it was relayed to him this way, was that the trade happened during the rookie draft. So it wasn't actually a player for a pick. It must have been a rookie draft pick in exchange for what was to be a pick in the November XFL draft. Of course, that never took place because we had the merger. So that would apply to the very next draft, which was this draft. That's how I understand it. I'm not saying it makes any sense, but that's my understanding of how it played out.
Understood. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as well because I didn't even want to try to tackle that personally. Hey, we had Cody Latimer. He commented on the show, guys. He said, "Keep it going, fellas. Love the talk."
Cody. Tear up that lead.
All right.
What's up, Cody? Good luck this season, man. Seriously, we'll be watching.
He must have heard we were saying good things about him. So
his ears were burning.
Yeah.
The show is spread around. We're definitely getting out there more now that everything's hit. But I tell you, man, there's about 8 shows that have popped up regarding here we go again, UFL and especially this dispersal draft. So, Cody, man, appreciate you watching and commenting. We look forward to your season, brother.
Amen.
All right. So, let me get a couple more names here. Added Agene Harris, former Houston Roughneck DB, another key part of their defense, I feel like, personally. I believe he had 5 interceptions on the year. I didn't look at it for sure.
There was a lot.
And so at one point he had the most in the XFL. I think someone passed him by 1 or so. But.
And you can see Coach Phillips didn't waste any time bringing him over. Yeah.
Very active on the field. When you watch him play, dude, it's everywhere. He's not sitting in one isolated position. He's ready to roll.
And I believe he's a returner as well.
Yep. Very shifty, very quick, agile. Next up, I had Vic Beasley, former Vegas Viper linebacker. Interesting thing about Vic was he was one of the first-round picks in that 2023 XFL draft for the Vegas Vipers. We all know how the Viper season went, but there was a lot of different controversies with that team that we don't even need to get into specifically. But yeah, guys, any other names on that list that you wanted to share or talk about? I mean, anybody that you guys want to highlight, please do. This is the time to talk about it.
I don't know. It was a good list, and obviously there's way more depth we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if anyone knows what's going to happen with Hines Ward. Is he just has a wrongful dismissal lawsuit? Is that basically where he ends up his time with the XFL, UFL?
Yeah, supposedly it was a contract that he was only on a 1-year contract and that refused to have less money coming into year 2.
Okay.
There's also some rumors out there, which of course these are just rumors, nothing verified, but it was supposedly something to do with Fox and the merger, that they really wanted Wade Phillips to remain in the league. And so since Houston Roughnecks were no longer going to be there, he was moving to San Antonio, and so they moved Hines Ward out. So it was
you got bumped. So when I said there was a lawsuit, I was actually incorrect. There's no lawsuit.
I get that the USFL needed to keep a team to make it 4-4, especially because they're doing the USFL and the XFL divisions. But if Fox really wanted Wade Phillips that badly, I just don't know why you don't move Houston's coaching staff of the Roughnecks and keep them with the Roughnecks and move. Right. If you're going to get rid of San Antonio's coaching staff, bring Curtis Johnson and the Gamblers over to San Antonio, right? Because Wade Phillips has much more of a history in Houston. I mean, that's the big draw. That's part of the attraction is Wade Phillips back in Houston, where he coached for so long, where his father was such a legend in coaching, and now he moves to San Antonio, and I don't know. It's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, you bring up some very valid points there, Greg. Yeah. It was a mess, and I think, wow, it's like, oh, we thought the Houston Roughnecks were dead and gone. No, they're not, because they're so popular, but they're just
And it
keeping
shows
the
you
name. It's like,
it shows you how last minute this happened, where
Right.
Yep.
Mark Lillibridge, Houston Roughnecks DPP, signs off on social media, and then a week later he's the Brahmas DPP because all the coaches move over there. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
so they didn't know what was going to happen. This is all a surprise.
this
And
was, and I had to laugh because I don't know if it was in a press release or if it was something said on television. Oh, the Houston Roughnecks and the Houston Gamblers were both very successful franchises and very successful, great. They have great trademarks and great images, but we moved the Roughnecks over to be the Gamblers. I'm like, well, if the Gamblers were such a successful trademark and it was so iconic, then why did you get rid of them? Like that, the way they phrased that made no sense. Oh, the Gamblers and Roughnecks are both great, but we got rid of the Gamblers and accepted the Roughnecks. Well, then the Gamblers weren't that great if they couldn't stand alone and you could just jettison the Roughnecks. I don't know. The whole thing is just, it's a mess, and it's over with now. And this is what we have. And now we can move forward, I think.
Well, that's right.
Yep.
And I wonder if Matthew can answer this, because Matthew has an inside track with the Houston. Are the Houston Roughnecks fans going to stick around for this new Roughnecks that are actually Gamblers?
Yes. And from my judgment, yes. Many of the super fans I've dealt with, talked to, even normal everyday fans, were ecstatic that they kept the brand. Personally, as a Roughnecks fan, I wasn't too happy with it. It's a sheep in wolf's clothing, it's just a little different to me. And that's my personal opinion as a fan. But from judging a lot of what I've seen, who I've talked to, I mean, we covered this Roughnecks brand popularity for months, trying to help just put it to the front of this conversation. And I think it eventually worked. And you can see Mike G said they saw the Roughnecks petition.
Yeah, that petition had, I think it had some juice. I think it worked.
Yep. And it's not a one-person effort. This was a collective effort amongst many fans, media, people that are just getting their voices out there. And the interesting thing was you didn't see a Gambler's side of that equation. It was the Roughnecks fan.
Yeah.
So I do believe they'll support this team, and they'll be there in similar numbers as what they were last year. You got to remember they were middle tier in terms of attendance, so it's not like they're going to expect 20,000 out. I'd say 15 will be lucky.
Well, they should be able to do better. I mean, they did better with XFL 2020. I mean,
definitely better with XFL 2020.
I don't know what it's going to be like with the new stadium, which they haven't announced. That's rumored to be Rice Stadium. I'm wondering if that will be good for them. I hope it is. And that being said, to all the Roughneck fans out there that fought for it, pat yourself on the back. It actually worked. But
Agreed.
It worked in a way that you never dreamed of, but it worked.
The fans
signed the petition too, and I'm not even a Roughnecks fan.
I know. I signed it.
I mean, it took 3 seconds to sign. You just signed into it and signed your name. It was super easy.
Yeah. Well, why not?
I do enjoy the fact that the league or leagues, the UFL, listen to the players. They listen to their comments, the shows. That tells me that they're actually on the ground working. They're not just sitting up in their executive boxes pointing down decisions and ruling over everyone. So I'm happy with the way things have turned out in terms for the fans. Personally, a little disappointed, and that's why I'll be checking out Memphis probably some this year, and especially with that stellar roster they got. But still love my Roughnecks, still love Houston, still love the fans, and good luck to them this year. Seriously.
Yep. And I know there's talk of bringing back like the Sea Dragons in the next year or the year after. I'm wondering how realistic that is, like for them to expand next year. Seems kind of unrealistic to me. And of course, I do believe the UFL wants to go back to Florida. I believe that's what they feel they need. And and how that happens and when it happens, that could be tricky. Because they've been lots of teams have been to Florida. Now I think somebody recommended that maybe the Orlando Apollos might be a good brand to bring back because they were popular. So,
I
or
think
not bring back. but
Orlando's going to be
revive.
fizzled out a little bit there. They're going to be. It's going to be hard to get that fan base back. Most of those people are very disappointed. I knew an individual that I'm close with that covered the Guardians, and he was all Guardian. He loved it. That was his thing. And
Yeah.
super disappointed with what's happened. But he's still going to continue to pursue the league, just a different team.
Well, there was that one Guardian fan that used to dress up in like a Wolfman thing. Is that the guy?
No. This is actually a media coverage member.
Oh, sorry, I missed that part.
I didn't want to say his name.
They have their fan base, but I mean, yeah, they've been burned. You know, the Orlando Rage. I mean, come on.
Speaking of burned, if they keep the same schedule in terms of starting in March and ending in June, that's going to be really tough selling in a lot of parts of Florida where it gets really hot and humid. And there's not going to be a lot of fans who are going to want to sit in a stadium in the middle of the afternoon in the 95-degree weather with 100% humidity and watch those games. Yeah. So
and it's going to be rough in Texas too, right?
Same thing in Birmingham, guys. It's
right.
Going to be similar.
So this year they're starting on March 30th. Is that just this year? Do you think? Like
that's what I was wondering too. I was wondering, is that necessity because they're so far behind with all the merger stuff and they plan to go back to February start next year, or is this just the schedule that they're going to have moving forward? I don't think we're going to know until next season rolls around.
Well, I think for you, RJ, the Alamo Dome is air conditioned, isn't it?
Oh yeah. That's a nice place too.
Start playing all your games down there, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in my time in the Alamo Dome, I remember I was even cold. I had a suit on, I had a jacket on, and some nice slacks and stuff, and I was still.
That wasn't just the cold beer you were drinking, was it?
Oh no cold beer in the press box, sir. Just that free barbecue. Anyway, guys, I had a couple questions I wanted to run through before we let you guys go. Is there anything else you want to discuss regarding the dispersal draft? And once we answer these questions, we're going to talk a little bit about phase 2, and then I'll let you roll out if you're good with that.
All right.
We've already sat on here for an hour and 18. It's definitely going to be a 2-hour show. Definitely. All right. So I had one fan, Philip. He said, drone cam, yay or nay? Do you guys remember this drone cam from the USFL season last year?
Yeah, it would buzz around.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I would love to see drones in the UFL.
Do you need a drone cam if you have a sky cam? I mean, what's the difference?
I think it could just get a little closer to the action and get out real fast. Yeah. You know, it could zip in, zip out, get angles that you can't see typically.
I think any way that you can present the game differently from the NFL, that's a selling point. And I'm reading a lot of reports that it looks like the XFL kickoff is not going to come to the UFL, which I don't really understand, because that's another one of those things, whether it's a broadcast innovation or it's an on-field innovation, you need to draw in fans who wouldn't normally check out this football. And how do you do that? You do that by being different. You do that by offering different rules, different broadcast innovations that the NFL is not doing, because there's a finite number of people who are willing to watch football that looks the same as the NFL, but with inferior players. I mean, that's just, it's the story of spring football. There's just not enough people to check that out. So you've got to give a little sizzle to that steak. And so I'm all for anything that makes the broadcast look different, any innovations that the NFL is not doing, whether it's on-field rules or whether it's from a technology point of view.
We've saw how spring football has changed some of the NFL's, camera angles, rules, there are different things that they have taken from XFL 2000 to XFL 2020. I mean, there are different things that we can look at now that I would say came from them, as well as the AAF. I believe the AAF had some great camera angles, if I remember correctly. You really saw that kind of being utilized in the NFL next year, the different angles. So I agree with you. Whatever they can do to get more interest, to be different, to have an identity of their own, be innovative and do something productive.
With those rule changes, we'll probably need another petition. Maybe another way to go is we'll start a thread in UFL board and we'll start tell them, talking about what we want. Maybe someone will read it.
XFL fans for it. USFL fans are not for it. That's going to be something similar to
Why?
that.
Come
It's just
on.
that reading a lot of comments and opinions, they just did not like it. A lot of those fans in the USFL
but it's
did
funny
not
because
enjoy it.
if you were to read comments by people who would not ordinarily pay attention to a league like the XFL, the one thing people said was, hey, you know, that kickoff rule is kind of cool. Like, it's something that even the NFL was considering. So it was successful in increasing returns. It was successful in preventing injuries on
that's
the most dangerous play in football. Now, maybe the USFL has stats that their kickoff was, you know, I think I saw where they 80 to 90% kickoff return rate. So that's really good, far above the NFL's. And, you know, if they were able to present data that showed that injuries were down as well from that, then okay. But, you know, something that is critically acclaimed as the XFL kickoff by people who wouldn't normally even pay attention to the league, I think that's something you want to keep.
Yeah. You know what? Just sell it. Tell them that this is created by Sam Schwartzstein on a restaurant table using Splenda packs and sugar packs. That's how it was developed, or I don't know if that was how it was developed, but that's one of the stories, and that's true. Of course, they tested it in the spring league and college. Yeah, I mean, it's got to sell it. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
Agreed.
Is there going to be an us and them? Sorry, an XFL versus USFL.
Sorry, but the feud is not over, Mark.
Well, how will it end? Will it end at the championship game?
I guess so. And then once it's over, we'll all shake hands and we'll all say, okay, now we're in this together.
No, we'll do it again next year.
Yeah, that's more likely.
Let's move on to the next question. Jay asked, hey, guys, do you see DeAndre Johnson of the Generals going anywhere? He could fit in Michigan at QB.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who, and I was talking to Mike Mitchell about this, that could be in that Jordan Teamu role in DC with their offense. He might be a fit there. So, yeah, I think he's a guy to watch out for in this second draft coming up.
Understood. Just wanted to ask that. All right, let's talk a little bit about phase 2 now. I know we talked about it there at the beginning of the show, but so phase 2 is going to be January 15th, 2024. I'm guessing from that we probably won't see the results until January 16th. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, the same as before.
So we're going to have a lot of changes that week. We're going to have a lot of things shifting. I'm sure we'll have many press releases to look at and develop in that time.
Yeah, and the UFL will definitely have to start up their transactional wire pretty soon because right now they're not. I guess there's no need for it, but that's coming. So they need to build that. Their website, you can see how it's building the new website. They're just adding pieces to it.
Yes, sir. Agreed.
And
well, all I know is I have the 15th and 16th off, so I'm going to be holed up in my office here, click-clacking away on my computer with my analyzation of these picks and free agency moves, if there are any on the 16th.
Yeah, that's all appreciated, Greg. You do such great work analyzing things and putting your take on things. Yeah, keep it up. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yep. You'll be grabbed up by Sports Illustrated soon too, my friend.
Well, those two guys that are Mike Mitchell and
Anthony Miller.
Well, they started with the XFL board, both of them. Mike Mitchell, when he was literally a 20 or 20-something year old. I don't know. I don't know how old he is now, actually. But he was 20-something. And
they've been on the show multiple times. They're great. They're great knowledge sources for the spring football stuff. So.
But you can see how SI Fan Nation is now covering because of those two are writing for it. There's now a lot of SI coverage. Now it's SI Fan Nation. But it gets mixed in, and you can see how that provides coverage for the UFL. Positive coverage, because that's what these guys are putting up, and what it shows is there's a lot of media coverage for the UFL. Probably probably more now than any other version of XFL.
Agreed. There's a lot going on. So if you're watching the show, I appreciate it. Taking the time. I know there was 3 or 4 different shows playing tonight regarding these topics. So appreciate you watching and listening to us, everyone at home.
Well, why wouldn't we listen to you, Matthew?
Oh, they came for you and Greg. They didn't come for me.
You're too modest. You're too modest.
You're too modest, Matthew.
This
you put on a good show.
I appreciate that. And this show really, I've always, since we started the live, and interesting enough, you guys were the first 2 on the live when I first started this. If you don't remember episode 1,
groundbreaking.
There's something so much more enjoyable to me than to have experts come tell me what their opinions are and what they know. Mm-hmm. You know, me as a person, I don't want to sit here and tell everyone what to think. I feel like getting those resources from the people that are necessary is key to having an understanding of what's going on. And if you're one-sided on that or only following one group, you're probably going to get swayed on the wrong side a little bit. So that I greatly enjoy everyone that comes on here, and you guys as well. It's been great and nothing but a good experience. This is episode 40. And like I said, things will be changing soon enough with the show as well. All right, so let's get back to the super draft. So we're looking at 20 players being picked up, correct, on that 15th date?
Maximum.
Max. So depending, we're going to look at some free agent pickups probably the day following. Is that correct?
Well, that's when it supposedly starts. Now, when that information is made public by the league, who knows? Is it going to be contemporaneous with the signing, or are we going to have to deal with leaks about who's signing where? I don't know. We've never really seen, at least for the XFL, we've never really seen a free agency period. So we don't know how it'll operate in terms of releasing that news. But, I mean, you can just kind of look at it from a numbers point of view. I think what was the number 75 they're going to be taking to camp?
Yes.
Is that the number? So
exactly
you start with 42 protections. I think the average was around 11 to 12 draft picks in the first dispersal draft.
They could have had 20.
Right. The max was 20, but I think only like one team drafted actually 20.
Right.
So most teams are in that 50 to 55 range of players right now. Let's say they add another 10 to 15 in the next phase. That gets you up to 65 to 70. So now all of a sudden you've got anywhere from 5 to 10 spots open for free agency or anything like that. So, that's just kind of a ballpark of what we may be looking at. Every team obviously is going to have a different philosophy on how to utilize the draft, different needs and different things that they're looking for in players in these drafts.
Yeah. So, they get that super draft done and then just wait, because there's probably, I think every one of these teams has players they have just waiting in the wings, the free agents. Yep. They're just going to start bringing them in.
And the other thing too, it's not just free agents, but let's take a guy like Jordan Teamu, whose rights belong to the Defenders, but he hasn't signed an LOI yet.
Right.
Let's say he signs a letter of intent somewhere between now and training camp. He would be added to the Defenders roster. So there are players who were not protected, who these teams may still have their rights, and between now and camp, they may sign a letter of intent to sign back with that team. So
that's
still a possibility too of adding players from last year back onto the roster.
So they leave spots for them. They'll leave the
Yeah, for sure. They will. There's no way
and
around
hopefully
it.
they're in contact with those players. They know what players are absolutely not coming back. They know what players are maybe on the fence. They know what players are coming back but maybe haven't signed for whatever reason yet, or whatever the case may be. So they may have their list of that as well from last year.
Every year with these leagues, we see all this roster churn. And this year, you know what? We're going to see it. But guess what? The training camp is coming quick. So this roster churn is going to be faster.
Yep.
And there's going to be a lot of things going on between now, because training camp starts on February, later in February, right? Third week of February.
24th, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
So that's
around there.
That's like 5 or 6 weeks away from now.
Mm-hmm. And this is really the first time, I know it's not the XFL anymore, but this is the first time in XFL history that you have teams coming back with players who've already played a season. So that's a very unique aspect. If you're someone like me who's followed spring leagues, but basically the XFL, it's a unique experience to have a team, not only a team returning, but also players returning from that team for a second season with them.
Cool for the XFL. I know the USFL fans are listening to this saying, yeah, that's nice.
So what? That's so 2023.
That's the last year for us. And you know what? That brings back to that whole thing. I mean, why did the XFL have to wait so long to get back on the field? Like they kind of dogged it, and they played that CFL thing, and they kind of played that deal. But if you look at what they tried to do with the CFL and merge with the they didn't call it a merger, but they were looking to merge. And why? Because they didn't want to compete with them. Now, last few months ago, I don't know when, Greg had a poll on XFL board at the time. It's UFL board now. And the poll said, when do you think that the USFL and XFL will merge? And the majority of people that answered the poll said, no, not this year, in the future, soon. But then, of course, boom. It has to happen now.
Yeah.
Why? Because you know what? I get that. They didn't want to compete forever. They were just beating each other down by competing. Mm-hmm. So they're going to get together. The disaster is half the players are going to lose their jobs. Half the coaches are going to lose their jobs. That's a disaster.
That is.
But they needed to do this. They felt they needed to do it sooner than later. So.
Yeah, I think confidently we can all say we didn't see this coming so fast. I can.
No.
At least.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
I don't like it.
I've had multiple people that I interviewed prior to that September news drop or whenever it was exactly. And I would always ask them, hey, what do you see of the future expansion of this league or the combination of two? And everybody was, down the road, we'll see this. A few years later, we'll see that.
Yeah.
There was nobody that guessed this.
Well, part of it too was, and this is her job, but Danny Garcia, if you remember, when she was doing the media rounds championship week, I mean, she was everywhere, print and video and all this kind of stuff, doing interviews leading up to the championship game. And, she was honest in some ways about ways that the XFL needed to improve, but, she was talking about expansion. So that doesn't give me, as someone who covers the league, the idea that the XFL is in such dire straits that they need to merge with the USFL to survive. The fact that they're talking expansion means like they're ready to go. They're ready to spend more money. And in fact, it was the opposite. They contracted. They lost 4 teams. So that was just kind of it's kind of bizarre to look back at that now. And it kind of felt like the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. Like Danny Garcia and The Rock were out doing media thinking one thing, and Redbird Capital, who was in charge of paying for all this stuff, was looking at the books and thinking another thing. I don't know. That's just my speculation, but it certainly feels like
exactly how it went, right?
Looking back on it, something was off there with that relationship.
Now, Danny Garcia has lost her team because she was the Orlando Guardians was in her backyard. She was all in for that. She lost her team, but it's like, that's a story. The story of what happened and who said what and how it went down is a story that it'd be cool if we knew the answers. I think that would be a cool story to tell. Now, would I ever know the answer to that? No. Can I write about it? Probably not. No one's going to tell you anything because they all play the media. Like Danny Garcia is a media. She mastered the art of media relations. She knows that's been her job, and she's built an empire on that. Mm-hmm. She's not going to spill the beans, but there's beans there that could be spilled. I know it.
Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of beans. I like beans.
You like beans?
Terrible. I hate them.
Magical fruit.
You don't like some white beans now? A little cornbread,
I don't like
y'all.
any kind
Come
of
on
beans.
now.
I don't like any kind of beans.
Come on down to Mississippi. I'll show you some good
jelly
beans. I promise.
If they're Starburst jelly beans, I like them. But most jelly beans, I don't have any time for either.
Especially in tacos.
But I'm telling you, there's a story there
beans.
that could be written about, and it could be the story of that would be great. But will we know? Probably not. And The Rock is I guess he just does what he's told to do. I mean, he goes out and promotes. And now I wonder if they're going to talk about player 54 this year. I wonder if they're going to do that. I think maybe that's dead. He was talking about it at one of the press deals. Which one was it? The NFL, I think the NFL one. Or was it the college day one? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
I think he'll bring it up, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a focus as it was for the XFL.
Yeah, it'll be a talking point, but
think about what a focus that was, because they even sold jerseys with 54 in them. I mean, that was, I don't know how many people bought one, but.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to ask you guys a question, then I'll let you get off here if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, before I move on, I want to note there are a vast amount of unclaimed players available right now. There's a lot. And I tried to find a list, but there's not a compiled list. There's a team here that has these guys and teams there that don't have these guys. So I'm curious to see a list, hopefully soon, of who exactly they're picking from this phase 2. And that'll be interesting.
Well, you could estimate a list by the remainder, but I mean, are they all?
Exactly.
Are they all in?
You have to look and see, are they here? Are they there? Did they come? We don't know.
I'm curious. Oh, interesting. So I thought maybe you could go to the XFL rosters page and still find some information, but it looks like that redirects now to the UFL website.
Yep.
So,
yep.
It will be interesting, to see what kind of transparency the league has now. We remember that XFL in 2020, they announced everybody who was in the draft pool, right? They were very transparent about what players they were picking from, who was being picked what round. XFL 2023 was not that way. They were very secretive about even like what rounds players were picked in for the rookie draft. And I think part of that we surmised was because they were protecting themselves against the competition, right? The USFL was out there ready to poach their players, and they wanted to be as secretive about who was picked where as possible, so the USFL maybe couldn't use it as leverage to get some of those guys over. Now that the two leagues are working together and it's one league, the hope is there's a little more transparency in these player drafts and player procurement going forward.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
2020, you just gave me a wow, we had lots of information in 2020. It was crazy.
Yeah.
That's why I went ahead and clicked the next question, because the 2020 is we all relive that as our prime days. I feel like that's when we all look back and good memories besides the shutdown.
I didn't have any gray hair in my beard back then.
I didn't even have a beard back then.
No, you're just an old grizzled guy.
Foosball fan said, how does the NFL futures deal work? Will that inhibit Teamu's comeback?
Mm-hmm. I'm keeping track on UFLboard.com. This is my 5th year doing it, actually. I'm keeping track of what players from practice squad sign futures contracts and what don't. That will allow us to see what players are available for UFL teams to sign. The way it works is basically if you sign a futures deal, you're locked in with that team until they release you, as far as being on an NFL roster. Now, Jordan Ta'amu is not signed a futures deal, so he is a free agent right now. So he is eligible to come back to the UFL. If the NFL team offers him a futures deal, which I find highly unlikely, I'm sure he would sign it. But we saw Battlehawks head coach Anthony Beck go on social media today and really try to reach out to those practice squad players and say, hey, don't sign a futures contract. Come to the UFL, get some playing time, put some time on tape for teams to see, and then you may be able to choose your destination. You may be able to sign with a team as more than an afterthought. So Coach Beck is working hard to bring those practice squad players over to the NFL, but already a lot of them have signed futures deals, the ones that are with teams that are out of the playoffs. So we'll see if that continues. We'll see how many of those players opt to not sign futures deals and enter the UFL.
Appreciate that insight, because I do not know. So that's why I look for you, Greg. I look for your articles because they really clear things up at points. I'm serious. I'm not exaggerating. Like, they really clear things up at certain degrees. Same thing with Mike Mitchell and Anthony, all those guys. So appreciate all your work in this realm, Greg, Mark. Appreciate you guys greatly. And that's about going to wrap us up for y'all's portion. I'm going to talk with RJ here, Bullish Brahma, get to know him a little bit more and talk about his show. But I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight. It's always fun. You're always welcome. I'm sure I'll see you in the next month or next 2 weeks, even maybe, depending on what drops. I mean, things have just shifted so much. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. And I've been trying to stay busy working on this brand, and it's hard to keep up with the news sometimes due to doing tasks. I mean, it really is. So I appreciate you guys and your coverage.
Of course.
Thanks.
Happy to do it.
Thanks, Matthew.
Until next time, my friends.
All right.
Take care.
I'll be putting all your stuff in the notes for people to find you, but I'm sure they all know where to find both of you guys and UFL board at this point.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Matthew.
And bye, RJ. Go Brahmas.
Bye, Mark.
Horns forward. There you go. Take it easy, fellas. Thanks again.
Of course.
Oh, look, I got rid of RJ. There you are. It's my bad, dude.
Oh, you're good.
So we're going to get some one-on-one time now. Appreciate Greg and Mark again for coming on. Good conversation about the Dispersal draft. You guys can check it out. It lasted about an hour and 40 minutes. So, you know, when we talked today, RJ, I told you it was going to be a 45-minute show. It's never that. Even when I try to compact it down as much as I can, it's never that. But it's okay. It's still enjoyable.
Absolutely.
You know, coming on, you're helping the team. You're part of the team. You're a contributor for the Alternative Football Network. We've got a lot of partners, a lot of contributors, but really I want to showcase, you know, the people that are underneath and really doing some work. You yourself, you do a lot of promotion for the Brahmas. You do a lot of updating on information. Your show is very unique. So I just wanted you to share more regarding the Brahma Bulletin. And first off, let's just find out about your background, man. Where are you from? What do you do? And what got you started in covering the Brahmas and the Gunslingers?
All right. Well, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for having me on the team as well too. I greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate you, sir.
So originally, I'm from Minnesota. I grew up there. I'm a Vikings fan. I'm a Timberwolves fan, Wild fan, Twins fan. Through the thick and thin, still root for all my Minnesota teams, as bad as they are every single year, but still root for them. After that, I joined the Navy, and I did 20 years in the Navy, and I retired back in 2016. And then after a year or so, I got a job down here in San Antonio. I've been here for going on 7 years now. And I recently got married. Married
Congrats.
2 years ago. So actually, our anniversary was just a couple months ago. So I consider San Antonio to be my home. So I'm trying to become more pro. So any San Antonio knows what that means.
I don't know what you mean when you say that. So I have to have a lesson in that one for
Well,
sure.
I'm still learning what that means myself too. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my background. As far as getting into the Brahmas and the Gunslingers, so the Brahmas, I really got into it because I was looking for a team that I can call, like a local team that I can call my own. Because I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from this, but I'll say it anyways. I don't like the Cowboys. I hate the Cowboys. I grew up hating the Cowboys.
Unpopular
I'm a Cowboy
Texas
country,
opinion.
so yes, I know people are probably going to unsubscribe from my channel after that. Yeah, I was looking for like a local team that I could call my own. That team that's not going to conflict with the team that I grew up, cheering for. And then lo and behold, XFL comes along, and there's a San Antonio team. So I'm like, all right, this is the team I'm going to embrace. It's my team. I can get behind it. I'm all for it. I'm diving in it 100%. And then, so my wife, she actually was a producer at ESPN for years. And so when the XFL announced that San Antonio was getting a team, I told her, it's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I followed this? Because I had a dream about it. And she's like, yeah, why don't you try to do it? So funny story. is that the channel started off with me at work. It was during my lunch break. I was in the parking garage taking laps around, and then I just whipped up my cell phone. I did a selfie, and I was just like recording myself. And I was just talking about the team because they just announced the name of the team is the Brahmas. So I was just rambling on about the name, and I posted up on YouTube because I've never done a YouTube video, and I wanted to see how hard it was. And then I was like, all right, I'll delete it later. And then I forgot all about it. Then 2 weeks later, I was like, oh snap, I forgot my video. So I go up there to delete it, and I had like a bunch of views, and I already had like 5 subscribers. I'm like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. And so I told my wife about it, and she's like, "Yeah, go ahead and continue." So I continued, and you look at some of my earlier videos, it's me at my work during my lunch break, just standing in front of my cell phone, just rambling on about whatever, and then and that kind of led to me continuing on, and then I start seeing that my numbers were growing and the views were growing. I'm like, cool. So I just could kind of continued on, and fast forward here, now I'm part of the illustrious and elite AFN team.
It's a pleasure to have you, my friend. I'm showing your YouTube right now to everybody at home. Guys, check him out if you haven't. You've got a pretty good following on YouTube, man. 879 subscribers. So
No,
that means that your
wow.
content is solid. Okay. Looking at that, it's not a bad number at all. You got me beat on YouTube for sure. I noticed your content as well in the season last year, though, and I watched it a few times. I can say personally,
Oh, thank you.
it was enjoyable because it's a real perspective. You know, you're not trying to be a character necessarily. You're not trying to do anything but be yourself and then talk about teams. So I feel like that's crucial, and it's the same thing with this show. Being a real person goes a long ways with people. People don't want fake individuals all the time. They want some real people. So, in terms of like your YouTube and stuff, what's kind of like your goals in covering, you know, the Brahmas or the San Antonio Gunslingers? How are you kind of gauging out what you want to accomplish with your show and your coverage?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to spread my passion and love for both teams to as many people as I can. And I'd like to be a trusted source for news and information regarding both teams. Not so much into rumors and speculation. I just like to present the facts and stories and articles in pretty concise manner. Most of my videos are usually like 15 to 20 minutes long because I know a lot of people don't like to sit through a very long, lengthy, rambling video. So I try to keep it short and concise. And most of my formats is like in a vintage newspaper type of thing. So it's kind of retro, which is kind of in style these days. But yeah, so my goal is to spread my passion, get the word out because XFL or the UFL now and the IFL are small niches. I mean, they're not as popular as the NFL, obviously. The audience is not as big, and quite frankly, there's probably a lot of people here in San Antonio that don't even know that the Brahmas or the Gunslingers even exist.
Yep.
So I would just like to be a little small voice out there to try to reach as many people and have fun and be entertaining while I'm at it as well too. And thinking about some changes making to the show. I got some ideas I would like to do for it. This is my first time being on a live stream.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity. So I was thinking that maybe I might start doing some live stream myself on the show. Maybe doing some like viewer interactions, uh, having them be out there to have their say, to speak their piece, to share their opinions. I see that the comments here are just are doing really well. There's a lot of
Yep.
comments in there, and so it's very engaging. And it's like, maybe I like to try that with my show to have more interaction with the viewers and get more engagement.
It's a lot more enjoyable in my opinion. I did the pre-production like you did, which my show was longer, but that first rendition of XFL 2023, we covered every week we did a show. And I was much more stressed out doing that than doing this. This, I know I can jump on here and it's enjoyable. And once you shake off like making a couple errors or saying a word wrong, it doesn't matter anymore. Because like I told you, we're all humans. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's the most intelligent person out there. We all have flaws. We all make mistakes, but it's the fact that we can interact with the fans and kind of answer their questions, get to know more about them. You see a lot of the regulars when you start doing this, and that's why I always say I appreciate it, because I see, I always have a steady stream of people that will at least give the content a chance.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think that'd be very productive for you. And you're always welcome to come back on, especially being a contributor. Hopefully in the season we can get you on to talk about the Brahmas as much as possible, and any games or any summaries or anything you want to discuss. It's the platform for you as well.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe doing like a vent line type thing where after the game we can have fans come on and voice their frustration for the one loss that we're going to have this year, and all of our exuberant adulation and ecstasy for the 9 wins that we're going to have, and when we hoist the UFL championship trophy, we can have all the fans come out there and celebrate together.
Did you attend that championship game last year?
I did, actually. I did. Even though, my horse wasn't in the race, I still went because, first and foremost, I'm a fan of the league. I was a big fan of the XFL. I supported all the teams. I watched every single game. Um, I went to every Brahmas game. I watched all their games. I went to watch parties. But I was just a fan of the league as a whole. And so I wanted to support it. And I was there at the Alamo Dome. I lived just a few blocks from the Alamo Dome, so I just went there and I had a great time. It was a very enjoyable game. I thought it was a great atmosphere. And
Agreed.
I really, really enjoyed it. And I really loved the league.
Yeah. And you, speaking of how you got started in this, I think that's kind of how I got started as well. Just being a fan and really wanting to know more. Once I started finding out more, I really wanted to engage with everyone more. And that's kind of what led to doing this. I tell you, hopefully we can get you some media credentials next year. I think it should be good and get you in there as media and let you check that out. Really get a feel for that media side, because, man, I fell in love after that. My whole perspective of the game of football has changed since then, that whole XFL season.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would really be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, in terms of, like you said, your future plans for your show, you're looking at maybe adding a live stream. Is there any other changes or things that you may be updating in the future?
Well, I was also thinking, because last season during my videos, I did a pre-game, like a preview for each week, and at the end of it, um, I did my prediction segment. So I usually did like 4 predictions, 2 offensive predictions, and 2 defensive predictions, and I gave a score prediction. And then I would keep track of all my predictions, and then after the game, I would go back and say, "This is what I predicted, and this was the outcome," and I kept track of my record, and I was about 24% correct, so my predictions weren't all that good. But I was thinking that perhaps doing that again this season, but also adding live stream where I can have fans come in and have their predictions as well too, and then I can keep track of like all the viewers' predictions, and then possibly at the end of the season, just randomly pick someone who scored better than I did, and maybe give them like a gift, a $25 gift card or a $50 gift card or something like that, as a thank you, as a token of my appreciation for all the fans out there and all the viewers who support my channel, and obviously your channel as well too. Just something to give back to those who take the time out to watch these videos.
Agreed. And anything you need from me, man, you just ask. You know how you've got direct contact to me from our partnership. Or I look forward to what we can do together. We have a lot of different people amongst us as contributors. I think there's 8 now, including me, or 9, including me. But you're one of the shows that actually exist in that realm. So I see me and you working together, and I'm really looking forward to how you evolve in your show And whatever you accomplish, man, just know that I'll support it and try my best to get it ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah,
No
I'm
problem.
really excited for this. I'm just looking forward to football again, especially here in San Antonio. There was, all the rumors and the merger news, and there was talk about maybe the teams going away and all that. It's just good to have all that behind us, and now we
Agreed.
can start talking about football. We can start talking about the games and leave all that stuff behind. And I'm just really excited for it, and just really, really can't wait for the season to start.
Agreed. Same note. I'm sick of the rumors, the leaks, the
Yes.
whatever. I mean, I want to talk about game summaries. I want to talk about how DC defeated. I don't know. I don't want to say a team because everybody's gonna get pissed, but that's kind of what I want to discuss, and I look forward to that as well, man. I appreciate you taking the 2 hours tonight to come on as well. Originally, when we scheduled this, it was just supposed to be me and you talking, basically talking about your show and more about you. It kind of evolved into what we have now, but I'll tell you, you'll learn from the live stream game. It's kind of, you have to let your fans kind of shape the show. Now they're not in control, but you really got to talk about what they want to talk about and try your best to facilitate that conversation. And that's really what I try to do by having experts like Mark and Greg come on and discuss things that I may not fully grasp or understand.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
But yeah, RJ, Bullish Brahma, I appreciate you again for coming on, man. Is there anything that you want to leave out with or tell the people at home? I'll have all his socials in the show notes. You'll see I had some flash in there at the bottom. They're on the bottom again. But yeah, find this man, follow him. He's on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter/X.
Yeah.
Appreciate your work in this realm, RJ.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just to all the people out there, especially those in San Antonio, the big thing is go to the games.
Get your butt in the
That's the big
seats.
thing. Get your butt in the seats, right?
Yep.
Support the team, because that's how we're going to survive. Because I mean, I get it. There's those that laugh and scoff and mock and ridicule spring football because we all know it has a very bad history. I mean, that one league starts and then 2 years later folds. Another one comes and then it folds. Another one halfway through it folds. So we get it, and we know San Antonio. Even though I'm not from San Antonio, I've done my research, and I know that San Antonio has a very long history of failed football teams in this city. And so I get it. But to prevent all that, go to the games, get your butt in the seats, buy the merchandise, support it. And not just us, just the league as a whole. Watch all the games out there. The viewership's going to get up, then the revenue for the league's going to get up, and that's just going to make it stronger and thrive and stuff. So that's what we do. Just get to the games, guys. That's the big thing. That's all I really want. That's the whole purpose of my channel, is to grow awareness and get people to the stadiums.
Yes, sir. We like it, and I appreciate it. And I wanted to hit you with this before we left. Texas Talking Football. I'm guessing that's Jay. He said pure, like totally San Antonio. So now we know. That's why we have the partners and contributors, though.
I've tried. Yeah, I'm not a native San Antonio. I've only been here 7 years. I still have a lot of affiliation, and my heart still is in Minnesota a lot of times. But I'm trying to be Puro. I follow the Spurs. I root for the Spurs, except when they play the Timberwolves. I do watch the SAFC soccer teams. I go to the Missions games. I watch them. I try to support all the local teams here. So I'm trying my best to be more San Antonian.
I think you do a good job, man. Keep representing and doing your thing. You got a lot of support from the people in the comments also. You got Brahma Babe, Rick 8-Bit, Texas Talking Football. I mean, these are all people that support you as well. So
Thanks,
keep
guys.
up the good work, man. And don't get down over anything. Keep this. It's going to be a good season. And I think,
yes,
especially with this team approach, we're going to have a good time.
Oh,
yeah. I'm glad that we could break you in tonight with this 2-hour stream.
Take some of the pressure off with some guys who actually know what they're talking about.
Exactly. But yeah, man, it's been a good time, and I appreciate it again. I'll share everything so they can find you easily, and look forward to what you do, man. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, RJ. If there's anything you need, you reach out, okay?
Yes, sir.
Have a good one, man. Thanks
You
again.
too. Horns forward, baby. Horns forward.
Horns forward. I will say it with you. Take it easy, my friend.
You too.
All right. I was trying to wrap this thing up under 2 hours. Appreciate the Bullish Brahma, RJ, for coming on tonight, as well as Mark and Greg. Great times, great conversations. It's fun. It really is enjoyable, especially when we have this relationship now that everybody kind of has their own place. There will be some updates coming to the show. Expect to see those next week. I've been working diligently on this stuff. I mean, all the time. I've been doing this for 2 weeks now. Lots changing. I'll tell you, Thursday, we actually have an interview series that starts up, and it's through AFN. And we'll just be interviewing different football people amongst the whole realm of football, whether it's personalities, players, coaches, staff, whatever. So check that out Thursday at 2 p.m. Central special time. Typically, we're going to try to book it in the same 7:30 Central time, but this Thursday is 2 p.m. Central. It should be a good conversation. Got call and plays with Kaylee coming on. Kaylee is a media personality, sports analyst / host. She does a few different co-hosting and hosting projects, but she's really broken out in the sports world this past year, 2 years ago. And so we're going to have a good time talking to her, get to know her a little more and see what she's about, and then find out more about her show. What I've found in doing all this is I really want to have a platform where we're not dedicated to a league as well. Well, this will stay. This podcast here will stay covering the UFL, no doubt. But we want to open our doors up to more individuals and more people. I've interviewed a lot of individuals this past year. I've interviewed a lot of players. Most were from IFL or smaller leagues. So I really want to give all those people that platform and the voice and the chance to speak and not be shadowed by something else. So looking forward to that. Check in Thursday. I should have the link up tomorrow with some more stuff dropping. I just don't want to drop everything without having it officially done. Appreciate you watching tonight. If you made it for the full 2 hours, you are dedicated, and I look forward to talking to you guys more. If you need anything, if you have a comment, concern, you can message me, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. I'm available. Reach out. Don't be shy. I'm here. I look forward to talking with fans. That's kind of what's been the front and center thing for me doing this. Started on Facebook, and it kind of blew up on Facebook and then went from there. The largest audience we have now is from Facebook. So appreciate you guys on Facebook for listening and watching, but it's always a good time and I enjoy it. We actually just hit 7,000 followers on Facebook today. So that's a big goal, big streak, shooting for 10,000 before the season starts. And I think we can do it. Once again, appreciate you all for watching, listening. Check in Thursday for another show. On the 16th, I'll have a guest. Hold on one second. I'm going to verify that date before I lie to you. Yes. So the 16th at 7:30 p.m., we'll have Luke Miller coming on. Luke does some coverage of the Birmingham Stallions. He's a correspondent for UFL Newsroom. So look forward to talking with him. We don't get as much USFL personalities on here, so it's good that we can actually branch out and talk to someone else that is an expertise in this field. So look forward to talking with you, Luke, on the 16th. That's it for me. It's been a long one. It's been a fun one. Like I said, guys, check out the site, alternativefootballnetwork.com. It's still being worked on. I've been working really hard on it, but hopefully we're getting to a good direction. And we're adding partners. I've got some more partners to announce, actually, for shows and coverage. Just haven't had a chance due to just busy. So appreciate you all again. Look forward to the changes. And thank you for watching, supporting, and listening. I am Matthew Tyler, and that's the end for me. Peace out. Much respect. Go Houston Roughnecks. Bye-bye.